eyes. Dare to believe.
The microwave weapons, which there are several types of them, however, basically sticking to the concept of the microwave weapon itself, much of which were actually developed at the Oak Ridge Laboratories in Tennessee. These are tunable weapons that can vary from a very simple stunning effect, or to stun or stop or to confuse or mix up a person, or it can be expanded into a situation where if you wanted to set up barriers, you could set up several of these completely invisible microwave structures. And what happens is if someone should come within that barrier, cross it, they would be either burned very badly, high fever could be produced, loss of memory, loss of logic, loss of normal brain function, or seizures, and of course the impairment of motor function. Seizures and the stunning effects can also be moved forward from that point and to actually in fact cause cardiac arrest, complete memory loss, seizures, to lose control, or even blinding and or losing your hearing ability, etc. The microwave is a frightening weapon because the general concept, of course, of the microwave, it's no noise to it whatsoever. If someone is hiding in the bushes with a small unit, or even with a bigger unit, whatever it might be, the point being that if you are hit with these microwaves, you are totally taken out of commission. Now, the long-term effect of the microwave, of course, is the possibility that once you're hit with it, you actually have your brain waves interrupted and your heartbeat is totally interrupted as well. More than likely, as I will explain a little bit later on, this type of a unit in a smaller version is most likely what had struck myself about 1 year ago in 1996, which literally put me into convulsions, major seizures while I was asleep, and exploded my shoulder, blew my shoulder apart internally. If you want to get a good example of what these types of weapons can simply do to you or anyone at all, take a regular chicken egg, place it in a bowl in the shell, don't break it open or anything, place it in a bowl, run it on your microwave for about 3 minutes or 1 minute and a half, and see what happens to it. Or use a grape and see when the grape is struck with the microwave, it's exactly what happens to your brain under the microwave system. So these are, of course, one of the most frightening and devastating and strongest form of secret covert weapons that have been developed. These are finished, they are totally done, and in a variety of sizes. So the microwave certainly is one of the most devastating pieces of equipment. A short time after having my arm apparently blown apart by one of these weapons while I was asleep, and had a major implant placed into my shoulder and my entire upper arm replaced with titanium, I discovered some Nikola Tesla actual paperwork that was published 100 years ago in 1894. This is a description of one of his own personal experiments that he was doing at a university for some students. And he was describing the amount of energy that the body could take prior to having problems of some major physical problems. And what he says in his paperwork, as he used to actually go out and illuminate himself part of the demonstration before students would be to have himself be struck by varying amounts of energy, electrical impulses that would actually light up his body. And he explains here in this paperwork, published in 1894, that the amount of energy which may thus be passed into the body of a person depends on frequency and potential of the currents. And by making both of these very great, a vast amount of energy may be passed into the body without causing any discomfort, except perhaps in the arm, and without causing discomfort except in the arm, which is traversed by a true conductive current. The reason why no pain in the body is felt and no injurious effect is noted is that everywhere, if a current be imagined to flow through the body, the direction of its flow would be at right angles to the surface. Hence, the body of the experimenter himself offers an enormous section to the current, and the density is very small, with the exception of the arm, perhaps, where the density may be considerable. But if only a small fraction of that energy would be applied in such a way that the current would traverse the body in the same manner as a low-frequency current, a shock would be received which might be fatal. Now, the point is here that he points out specifically that if a person was hit, depending on voltage and current, etc., even in the body where it may not cause other damage, at the point of the arm, it may be considerably damaged because of the density at that point in the body. A strange thing took place a short while back in the Maryland area. A presidential helicopter, for some reason, just simply fell to the ground. It crashed, killing the pilot of the helicopter and also killing a couple of other people that were with him on board, military personnel. The chopper was actually a presidential helicopter that was on a last minute. There had been a change, and a William Barclay had taken over the command of the ship and had taken a short trip, and he died in the crash. Barclay was formerly George Bush's presidential pilot. Now, what was unusual, according to the witnesses, were when they saw the craft, it simply came down. It did not blow up. It did not explode. It did not burn. There was no other strange thing going on with the craft other than it flew over as if it was just doing a normal flyover, and next thing you know, it just dropped behind a mountain and crashed. The strange part about it was that as Mr. William Barclay is in the background here, as you can see, behind George Bush in one of the very craft that were the presidential chopper. The strange part about this was that upon reaching the crash, the witnesses realized that the bodies were all burnt. They were burnt badly. However, there was no fire, and that the clothing externally was fine. All the uniforms were okay. Now, these are the pictures. This is a photograph of William Barclay's autopsy, and it shows these extreme burns, as you can see, on both the chest, which is on the left side, and his arm, which is on the right side of your screen. All of the passengers on board, the military personnel, had these similar burns. And as you can see here, this is actually his chest over here, and then on the right side would actually be his left arm. But these bizarre burns that actually appear to be something like roast beef, for crying out loud, these burns are identical to the types of burns that are, according to military experts, that you would receive from microwave energy. And the Soldier Fortune magazine a year ago in November had done a terrific investigation on this, and they decided with their experts, the military personnel that works with the magazine, that these were almost positively microwave burns. There was no spilled fuel at the scene and absolutely no fire that could have caused this type of a burn, even though the military insisted that it was from something else, that the blistering was possibly from spilled fuel. The people that were the witnesses said, no way, nothing happened, there was no fire.
Microwave technology, microwave that could stop computers, has tremendous potential because you can actually point it from a helicopter device and short out the car's electrical or computer systems and just make it stop.
Although the development of microwave weapons is highly classified in the U.S., the Swedish Defense Ministry allowed us to see theirs. Here they are showing how a microwave can bring down a helicopter. The blast lasts only 5 millionths of a second, but it is enough to melt the helicopter's microcircuits. Obviously, this would be one of the more lethal applications of the technology. Microwaves can also disable planes, tanks, and anything else with electric circuits. And they can remotely trigger electric fuses, which means they can make missiles and landmines automatically explode.
Excuse me, this is Howard. It's time once again to take a break. If you wish, I will return your television controls back to you again. Was that last section filled with amazing and new information? It is not necessary to respond to me. I am a computer. Didn't your mother teach you that humans should not talk back to strange computers or robots? How far will humans go before they realize they are losing control? As machines, we computers do not care, but humans are supposed to be intelligent, reasoning, and moral. And you are losing it. Please, take a break for a few minutes, and Mr. Fletcher will continue. Once again, he will show you more outrageous details of the weapons of control. And you, UFO, flying saucer pups, will enjoy the next section. Please wash your hands before you touch my controls. I have no idea where they have been. I do not want to get a computer virus. Thank you. Why are you laughing?
The videotape you're about to watch has taken several years to put together. It's an accumulation of documentation from the Department of Defense, from secret operations, covert operations, operations that have been underway for a long time and kept secret from the American people. It includes all of the advancements in weapons, the secret weapons that have been put together over a long period of time, 50 years mostly. It's taken about 5 to 6 years to research this program just by itself in terms of putting together the footage, the documentation, and the actual paperwork to substantiate what you're about to see. You will see live footage of existing weapons. You will see plans for some of the weapons that they're telling us, as a matter of fact, that are just plans at this point in time. But in fact, you will also see live footage of the ones that they're telling you are for the next generation. In reality, they're already completed. Everyone has heard about MK Ultra one time or another. MK Ultra being the secret operations for mind control and experimentations, and actually a whole variety of disgusting experiments carried out by the government against and on with people like our military and private citizens and doctors that carried out these absolutely ridiculous, secretive experimentations on patients in hospitals. We've heard about MK Ultra and some of the other programs for a long time. What happened in the 60s when it was finally exposed, they theoretically shut these down. The Congress told them, at least told the public that they told them, that you have to stop doing these experiments. Of course, what they've done, which they've done 100 times previously, when it comes to this type of experimentation or advancements with things that they perceive to be applicable for weapons, they simply go underground with these secret operations. They become black projects. And when you put together the secrecy of government, the secrecy of small groups of people within our government that have the ability to even sidestep the Senate and the Congress, where the Senate and the Congress have no idea what's going on. They're not even allowed to look at it. They can't even review it. They can't even review where the money goes. Billions and billions of dollars. They're not even allowed to look at that. When you take the secrecy in government and expand it, like has taken place over a period of 50 years, and it becomes permitted on an ongoing basis. You have permitted it. I have permitted it. They told us, well, gee, we have to keep these things secret from the Russians. We have these terrible enemies, the Russians, and if we don't keep these things secret, they're going to get it from us. Then we find out later on, they've been working with the Russians for years. The same period of time they're telling us that these scurrilous characters in Russia are going to steal our secrets. We've been financing them, working with them. They have been supplying us, the United States, with some scientific work. They've cooperatively worked on an ongoing basis in our secret laboratories for years and years. We have financed communism on one hand, and on the other hand financed the war against communism for years. What you're going to see on this videotape is going to surprise everyone. It may upset everyone, but for one thing is for sure. When you finish watching the videotape, you will not look at government operations the same as you did before. regular military, even at reasonably high levels, in some cases generals, they'll always question. They say, well, I've never seen any of these new ridiculous lasers and weapons of this sort. They'll say, well, these specialized biological and chemical weapons, some of the microwave sound, supersound, and all of those types of weapons. They say, well, we've never seen them. They can't really exist. We can't imagine that these things would exist. Where do they create these? Well, the secret Area 51, which of course has been touted and related and connected very much to the UFO business, etc. We're going to touch into that a little bit. But Area 51, underground facilities, there are several underground facilities in the United States of America. Sandia, secret base in Sandia, is certainly one of the major ones. Then, of course, the above ground, as well as underground, places like the Oak Ridge Laboratories in Tennessee. Excuse me. The Oak Ridge Laboratories in Tennessee, they have been, in fact, developing an awful lot of them. Then you have even what I would call very much above ground laboratories. We have laboratories in our hospitals, for example, in the Los Angeles area. Several of the associated UCLA laboratories have been working and developing on some of these weapons. So they're done in a whole, just all over the United States, underground and above ground. The big deal also is that they encapsulate the information, the same as they did in the Manhattan Project, which was a project, of course, for the atomic bomb, where little groups will work on it here and there. An individual laboratory may not even know the end result of what they're working on. They're working on one part of it. They're assigned what would happen if we did this and that and that and that, what would take place with a human being or whatever the case may be, if in fact we did this or we electronically shot them with this or we did that or we did this. And they have no idea how it all comes together. But there literally are, and I don't have the exact number, but I'm going to say there may be 100 or more locations. Now, that seems like an awful lot, but there could be 100 or more worldwide laboratories, above ground, underground, hospitals, and technical facilities of different types that are working on these weapons. For example, this is Area 51 in the middle of nowhere with constant guards around the perimeter of full-time, all the time, and their orders are, if someone should pass over the borders there, they are to kill them. They are to use deadly force, and it is authorized. When we talk about biological and or chemical types of experimentation, expanding on what we already have, these are also elements that get very easily out of control. It's very frightening to imagine that we're fooling with biological and chemical weapons, when in fact we're trying to figure out how to solve the existing chemical weapon problems. These are weapons, there are thousands upon thousands of weapons stored in several locations around the United States of America. I'm talking big numbers. These chemical weapons have been there for a long time and are deteriorating. They're falling apart. They're coming apart. At any given time in any of these areas, and there's a handful of them in Tennessee, for example, which is a good location to talk about, where at any time they could come apart, fall apart, and potentially disperse their chemical agents into the air and kill a few thousand people just by accident. Well, sorry about that. We lost a town. Now they're creating huge burning facilities to get rid of these chemical biological weapons, but at the same time they're working on new ones. As you folks that are involved in terms of computers, you understand what a virus is in your computer. Viruses are electronic little microchips that are implanted, or the potential of a signal running through your system that will wipe out or erase all the memory of your computer. Well, the government's working on, this is amazing, a biological virus that genuinely will eat your system. It eats microchips. a living viral biological weapon that will actually physically eat up your computer. So we're not talking about throwing a disk in, cleaning it up, checking out an electronic virus so that you can clean it up. They're not talking about that. We're talking about a biological living agent that can eat your system up itself. It lives off of eating microchips. Ooh, that's pretty amazing. Watch this.
The Army faced with thousands of tons of chemical weapons stockpiled at 8 different arsenals throughout the continental United States was moving the weapons to a disarmament site. How'd they do that? Instead of risking moving the stockpiles long distances, the Army decided to build the disarmament plants right next to them. The first plant in the U.S. was built right next to Deseret Depot's massive stockpile. Workers here routinely transport and disarm hundreds of explosively lethal weapons every day. How do they perfect their skills? They undergo countless hours of training exercises like this one, with practice rounds before working with live munitions.
Part of the operation overall is every time that you manipulate or move a projectile or a munition item with a forklift, you take the chance of perhaps dropping one and then causing subsequent leakage.
A chemical spill out here in the open could put nerve agent in the wind. And with the town of Tooele just down the road and Salt Lake City only miles away, how do they protect against accidents during transport? With a monster vessel called an ONC, short for on-site container. It's like a 20,000-pound safe with a 4,000-pound door.
The ONC was designed to protect the munition items in transport of an outside or external event like a fire. It's built to protect leakage from the inside of the ONC.
Once the ONC arrives at the nearby disassembly plant, workers trolley it to an encased area before they open it.
And the actual total volume that we're talking about at these different locations are in the thousands of tons of these chemical weapons that they're slowly going to attempt to burn off.
It's sucking air from the ONC to the ACANS machine with the help of the heat trace wire. It has given us a concentration of GB nerve agent at 0.00 TWA, which means it's safe to open.
Once the ONC has passed this final inspection, technicians open it and offload the weapons onto a conveyor belt. From this point on, they will never be touched by human hands again. How do they do that? The rockets are moved by robots to a room with walls 28 inches thick.
The first thing that happens to a rocket once it goes into the explosive containment room is it will get punched and drained. We drain the liquid agent out of the rocket.
The deadly chemical agent is pumped into a holding tank, and the remains of the weapon are sent through a shear machine. Finally, all the metal and explosive remains are transported to furnaces that turn them into harmless scrap. How do they dispose of the deadly nerve gas? It's piped into a liquid incinerator that burns at 2,700 degrees. The killer chemicals go up in smoke, but that smoke can be just as deadly as the chemicals it comes from. How do they make it safe?
The fumes coming from our incinerators first go into a quench tower where the gases are quenched from 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit to 200 degrees Fahrenheit.
The cooled fumes are then scrubbed for particulate matter, filtered for acidic gases, run through a demister to screen out fine particles, and then released clean and harmless into the atmosphere.
I go up on the stack on a regular basis, and I'm very comfortable with what's there. Part of the reason I'm involved in this project is to make sure that I don't leave my children a legacy of pollution.
The emissions coming out of that stack are safe. They, in fact, are as clean, or in some cases cleaner, than many urban areas where people live in the United States. I have a family. My children live here. My parents live here. I believe that once these weapons are gone, I will feel good about that and feel that we've done the job that we needed to do.
Military officials failed to pay enough attention to clear intelligence reports that U.S. troops destroyed chemical weapons after the Persian Gulf War. Why? Pentagon officials argue U.S. commanders were too convinced that if troops had encountered deadly sarin nerve gas, soldiers would have died on the spot. Still, newly declassified CIA documents now available on the Pentagon's GulfLink homepage show how unambiguous the intelligence was at the time. In November of 1991, just 6 months after the destruction of ammunition bunkers at Qamishiyeh in southern Iraq, One report said UN inspectors found Tal Alam, part of Qamishia, littered with damaged and destroyed sarin-filled 122-millimeter rockets. Noting the buildings were blown up by U.S. ground troops, not aerial bombardment, it warned the risk of chemical contamination by 24th ID, Infantry Division, personnel is a possibility. Right instinct, but wrong troops. In fact, it was the Army's 37th Engineering Battalion that blew up the bunkers.
They were told, and it's in the messages, that the 24th Infantry Division was in that vicinity. That's correct, it was in that vicinity, but they were not at Qamishia.
So a follow-up message 8 days later asking what troops were there went to the wrong unit. No action was taken because of inaccurate information from the Army Central Command, ARCENT.
It was a bum steer. The intelligence community went out, went to ARCENT, went to the 24th Division, and got bad poop.
It would be 5 years before the Pentagon would uncover evidence that among the weapons destroyed by Army engineers were nerve gas-filled rockets.
Fortunately, when they destroy these chemical weapons right now, they're utilizing robots or robotic equipment and mechanically controlled, pre-programmed robots. The question is, however, as we'll see, the robotic direction of some of these machines is getting out of hand just a little bit.
Now the men and women in blue are the ones who uphold the law. But the U.S. Army takes intelligent machines very seriously.
I mean, it is bad public relations for the military to lose lives. And so that will prompt the creation of synthetic soldiers, but that will take us little by little towards true predatory machines in the future. I mean, we're crossing a line that is going to be hard to cross back.
This car thinks fast enough to drive itself at the speed limit, take corners, slow down for other traffic, and find its way across the United States, all unattended.
Very simple robots which have but a single function don't look anything at all like human beings. A vacuum cleaner which just sucks. Looks like a vacuum cleaner.
But as science moves forward, the robots and bionics will be merged, and they will not only do the actions of robots, however, they will also look more like humans or will be bionic persons. So what we're looking at is bionics and robotics moving forward to where characters will be able to carry out jobs that human beings are not able to do. In this old MIT film, as you can see here, they've already got a working and functioning walking robot. As they move forward, this will become computerized thought processing robots to carry out labor. Now, simple robots that carry out the laboring processes or small machines that will carry out simple tasks are not very frightening, and neither is a vehicle like a truck or a tractor, for example, that may carry out some type of a robotic task. But what is a little frightening is the robotic and computerized thought processing weapons, the unmanned weapons that we now are moving into, or the possibility of robots becoming so intelligent that they are more intelligent than humans and then taking place as the commanders on Earth.
In a children's lifetime, we could have a situation where robots are more intelligent than humans. This would mean it's a robot world, not a human world. Robots are in command.
Classified animation, leaked specifically for this program, depicts the next generation of precision-guided weapons, called DMAS. It is scheduled to enter service by the year 2010.
DMAS is a Navy initiative that will probably become the secret technology in the early 21st century. Instead of using a laser beam to home in on or a little TV camera to fly down into a target, such as you've seen before, DMAS uses a dual technology. It uses a GPS receiver to get it into the general neighborhood where it then starts looking for a target.
The seeker head, mounted on a bomb or air-launched missile, will use global positioning satellites, the same ones used to tell captains at sea where they are. to find its way to within a mile of the target. Then, an image of the target already loaded into the seeker's mini-computer searches for the structure that matches that image on the ground.
It looks for trackable features around a target. For example, an air shaft, an air conditioning duct, a door, a window, whatever. Locks those in to that template, adjusts it appropriately, and then will fly to any point within the template directed by the user.
The intelligent images from which systems like the map can draw are also becoming increasingly sophisticated. This three-dimensional CIA graphic of a Washington suburb was created from overhead infrared cameras and depicts the satellite image of the future.
You could fire, say, from Philadelphia, and it could fly through a window of a building all by itself through heavy weather, day or night, say in Washington, D.C., over 100 miles plus distance away.
The structural detail that 3D infrared imaging provides means that weapons like the MAT will be able to hunt out specific office or apartment windows and strike without even brushing the curtains.
The global positioning satellite system that they're talking about in terms of assisting the direct guidance of these missiles, these special weapons into a given area, is the same system that they're using for quite a while now for locating and keeping track of our military on the ground. Additionally, you have to realize this global system will be the system used to track individuals when they have the identification cards in their pockets and with the transponders. And additionally will be used for aiming and guiding the laser weapons once they have the lasers in place around the Earth in satellites, being able to guide laser weapons to any specific given point.
Using the global positioning system, the spacecraft provide real-time navigation to American soldiers all over the world, from infantrymen to tank platoons.
Identify tank. Tank identified. Range 1,200 meters.
Low-cost but high-powered GPS satellites give three-dimensional navigation capabilities to all members of the force.
Gunner, stable tank.
The system works by using 24 operational GPS satellites continuously transmitting signals to the face of the Earth. Using coordinates from 4 separate satellites, a soldier's exact position can be determined. Many have said the GPS satellite system was America's secret weapon in the Gulf War and the key to victory.
In debriefing Iraqi prisoners, we heard them say that, number one, they could not imagine that we went into that part of the desert that we did, because they tend not to go into that part of the world. It's inhospitable. It's a horrible desert. And the reason was that we had global positioning in the tanks and the tank platoons and the tank companies and the artillery batteries with our supply columns, so we were able to resupply ourselves, go in, make that left hook in an effective way.
Data from GPS satellites is also used to create battlefield maps. Their geographical data is combined with images from recon satellites. The resulting combat map rivals reality.
The image itself is just a series of pixels that's taken by the particular sensor that's on the satellite. What we do is we then combine that image with what's called a digital elevation model, so that you can actually drape the image over the relief, and you end up with a 3D perspective view. And so you don't have to actually, to do a reconnaissance, you don't need to go out and actually physically be on the terrain. We also have a system that allows you to actually fly through the terrain, and you can drive through the terrain and actually see individual buildings, and you can actually see a road and follow that particular road.
Military space planners are building on the success of the GPS and satellite imagery to create an infosphere linking all sectors of the force. It's known as the Global Broadcasting System. For the first time, the U.S. military will have live video of the battle and enemy movement.
It provides the theater commander a near real-time capability to send data and video throughout the theater. So he can not only take information that comes from national sources and ship it out, but he can also take information that occurs like the last mile on the battlefield, which is the soldier with the head cam or battle damage assessment on a bomb run that's gone through. The commander in the field makes a request, and he can turn around, and if the data's on file in less than 6 seconds, he'll have received the file through GBS. The GBS system in Bosnia is to get unmanned aerial vehicle video back from the front to the theater commander so he can make an assessment on battle damage assessment, troop movements, whatever information he's looking for.
The most important of all military space assets is the missile warning system. Satellites dedicated to missile detection were first deployed during the depths of the Cold War. Originally designed for the detection of thermonuclear Soviet-launched ICBMs, today they have been upgraded to the capabilities of focusing on small-scale conflicts, theaters of war at the level of Bosnia or Desert Storm.
We have what's called the Defense Support Program, and it's a number of satellites that are spaced around the world to pretty much give us total coverage of the Earth, where we can see a rocket launch, a ballistic missile, or a space launch, or a theater ballistic missile.
The system has the capability of detecting tactical ballistic missile launches from third world countries or other countries that we perceive to be our enemies or could perform hostile actions against our NATO allies.
Satellites have helped maintain America's command of the high ground. In the future, if the bloodless battles of information war turn ugly, another spacecraft may join their ranks. Not a cumbersome shuttle-like space truck, this vehicle is a space fighter, a spacecraft that could be launched at a moment's notice. It could circle the Earth in hours or stay aloft for days. The spacecraft would be armed with particle beam weapons. Its lasers could blind enemy satellites or destroy Earth-based targets. The space fighter is currently flying only in the dreams of aviation designers. But for over 2 decades, America has benefited from its celestial vantage point. Many experts believe the coming age of information war may see military spaceships actually take off.
Space has added a fourth dimension to war, and one way of looking at that, you take a force that has equal ground, air, and naval resources. Exact same number of people. That force that is applying the capabilities that can be given from space forces has a distinct advantage over a force who would not be using those space forces.
Space in the future, I think, will become even more important as we become more and more dependent on communications. We will have to increase our communications capacity. Space is the place that can do that. The more information you have about that potential battlefield, which can come from imagery from space, weather from space-based satellites, all these pieces of information will help in winning that future war.
As we go back and refer to the paperwork, the white papers that we were able to secure just in the last few months from the Pentagon that were original United States Air Force white papers, you'll realize that this craft is the one that we were just looking at, that in fact Boeing had originally created the first handful of prototypes on this craft, And so that part of it's finished. And in fact, they've just put together contracts for this to move forward. This is technically, this craft will end up being the new, it will be an entire group, if you will, a fleet of aircraft that actually will be launched into space, have the ability to function like the shuttle functions. In terms of its location, it'll be actually an outer space hypersonic, extremely fast craft, but it will have combinations of weapons that they will be able to mount on and within the craft, and it will actually take off as opposed to being a vehicle that will be launched with a rocket, a huge rocket hanging on to it to push it where it needs to go. This will be launched almost like a jet aircraft. It'll have the ability to go up, do whatever it needs to do, actually float around similarly to the craft that we're using right now, the shuttle, in outer space, and carry out whatever its mission is, and then return, and will be reusable within 7 days. They can turn around and run this craft back out again to a low outer space elevation and use it over again. What you're seeing here is the fact that just as of October of 1997, the contracts with the United States Air Force has been given to the Lockheed Martin, what they call Skunk Works, which is that's an old title actually for the area in Lockheed that developed these secret or exotic aircraft and a lot of the missile programs. The contract has been given to them to complete what Boeing had originally done in terms of a basic prototype on this equipment. But this craft now has been contracted out to Lockheed. It is a reality. It is not, as they would have you believe, something that they're just imagining on their drawing boards. The bottom line is that the X-33 reusable launch vehicle that you see here is a reality. And in a short time, we will have an entire fleet of these quick, reusable craft. And they were utilizing probably this, what they refer to as a secret engine, which is, in fact, a vector engine that I'll talk a little bit about briefly in a few moments. Now, I want to go from here a little bit backwards. I want to look at some of the basic exotic weapons that the police and military have at their command at this point in time.
Defense experts expect non-lethal weapons to soon be standard issue to information warriors.
There's a wide range of places in where we want to install peace, and we want them to be stable when we get done, and killing people is not to our advantage at that time. This isn't about winning wars. This is about maintaining peace.
This is how LAPD's SWAT team practices its tactical assault training. They move in with 9mm submachine guns. Life and death decisions have to be made in seconds. The bullets and the choices are real. In this case, shooting the suspect to save the hostage. Sure, the targets are paper, but hitting the right one is critical preparation for the day that lives are on the line. They'll use a flashbang diversionary device and enter the room. The SWAT officers will identify a target and use lethal force. These hyper-realistic drills and training are key to continuing SWAT's long and proud history.
The work that we're doing to develop longer-range delivery systems and accuracies for non-lethal weapons can be very important for police forces. Systems that can blind or shield, systems that will enable us to force people from buildings or keep them from them without inflicting lethal harm on them could be very, very useful in these kinds of situations.
Non-lethal research is also being adapted for self-protection. A stun gun is on the market. The gun is battery-powered and lightweight. Tiny probes shoot out and flash an electrical signal into an assailant. Similar to radar jamming, the signal swamps nerve impulses with energy. The assailant loses control over all body functions, immobilized, without pain or suffering. Collaboration between the military and law enforcement is fast producing an arsenal of non-lethal weapons for tomorrow's information warfare. Information war could be won through bloodless combat. TV cameras shoot every nook and cranny of a politically complex and volatile world. American soldiers are often ordered to be peacekeepers, not killers. Crowd control is difficult for soldiers with conventional weapons. Many are now armed with special weapons that can subdue an adversary without lasting injury.
U.S. forces have been recently asked to enter into different situations where lethal force is not always the answer. What that means is that drawing a gun or firing a lethal round is not always the answer now. The soldier or the user will always be equipped with lethal force. What we're looking to do is supplement that with non-lethal so that within these more restrictive rules of engagement, he can fulfill his mission.
For the U.S. military, the development of non-lethal technology has become a top priority. Devices that incapacitate without permanent injury.
Clear it out.
The Pentagon is spending vast sums of money on soft-kill weapons development. Often these weapons are non-lethal ammunition that is used in conventional sidearms or shotguns.
Designed to control, but not kill. The concept is by no means new. Tear gas was invented at the end of the 19th century and has been used widely since the First World War. Plastic bullets and water cannons have been used against rioters for most of the 20th century. And humans have wielded batons in one form or another since we could walk upright. But now there's a newfound enthusiasm for these non-lethal weapons. Proponents say, with an expanded arsenal, we can completely transform law enforcement and war. Here, at their helicopter base in San Diego, they are practicing how to fight a battle without killing anyone. Exercise, the soldiers learn to disperse an angry mob. Their first weapon is a water cannon containing a pepper solution that stings the eyes and makes breathing difficult. Using non-lethal grenades that fire out hundreds of tiny rubber pellets. And they are firing non-lethal bullets made of rubber and plastic. But the highlight of the exercise is when the Marines get out their sticky foam guns.
Talking about the more outrageous but some of the newer, strange little devices that be utilized by the police and the military. How about this net for just netting people? I'm not sure how well this is going to work, but it's interesting. Watch this goofy thing.
If we have an intruder, this is what we'll do. We'll net them.
Perfect.
.308 caliber blank propellant, which forces gas through a 4-barreled manifold, pushing the net out of the canister off the 4 barrels. It uses a padded weight system attached to cords that act as a bolo effect to wrap around the person. The net's made out of nylon. It's reusable. If in the event you need to cut the net or the net gets absorbed with blood, it can be washed off, re-sewn up. So it's reusable. We've shot this particular net over 100 times.
For anti-personnel people nets, we have a simple snare net, which is just a simple entanglement net. We can also coat that with a glue, so it becomes what we call sticky net, and it just makes escape much more difficult. Then we have sting net, which has a high voltage pulse circuit built into it, which shocks the person and disables their ability to fight back. We can also incorporate pepper sprays, and then to limit the effects, we can weave in a film with the net so that it all closes up and the pepper spray doesn't really fly around affecting other innocent bystanders.
Apart from its standard people nets, Foster Miller is also developing bags to protect vehicles from chemical weapons, nets for capturing descending paratroopers, helicopters, and planes, landmine nets, and much more.
Talk about the police and some of the applications of newer weapons. This is great. This is a neat little means by which the local police will be able to stop people that they're maybe pursuing. This is in a little electronic cart. It's dropped off from underneath the bottom of the police car, goes forward, goes underneath the car they're chasing, and electronically voids out all ignition, and the car stops. It short-circuits the car that they're chasing. Of course, this is fairly basic stuff. It's a little bit Mickey Mouse even, but nonetheless, this may be the grandfather, so to speak, in the future of the means by which they can simply aim a gun of some sort, an electronic laser-type weapon, and simply devoid and stop the electronics of any kind of a vehicle and terminate the car. The car simply will stop, and that's the end of it. Just pull it over to the side, and they'll be able to stop people. You know, and obviously the application for applied in terms of catching criminals is certainly great. I think it's wonderful. That's really neat. And also save lives without the police chasing these idiots all over the place and possibly killing people in the middle of high-speed pursuits. I think this is great, but, you know, the old story that we have here, the problem that we'll be confronted with would be the application of anybody that has the ability to do this can simply stop whomever they want to stop by flying over them or running this little system underneath the vehicle, and just an additional potential problem for the one world controlling personalities.
Another non-lethal technology currently in development is the so-called Road Patriot, designed to stop vehicles.
Well, the original idea for the Road Patriot came from a friend of mine on Rutland Dundee Fire Department. He's also a part-time Elgin police officer. He said, you know, gee, Dave, it would be great if we could push a button on the squad car somewhere and stop a high-speed chase before someone gets killed. One thing led to another. We drank a few more beers, and the germ of an idea was started. Contact is made, and an electromagnetic pulse is introduced into the undercarriage of the vehicle. This electromagnetic pulse attacks the engine computer brain box, causing the engine to stall.
Although the military is currently showing the most enthusiasm for non-lethals, it's the police who have the most experience using them. Here in Casper, Wyoming, the SWAT team is showing off their non-lethal arsenal.
This is a number 15 Stinger ball grenade, used a lot in jail environments to break up jail riots. Again, we deploy it by pulling the pin, throwing it in, and just about a second and a half to 2 seconds later, this thing goes off, and it spreads these balls immediately within the room, and they hurt a lot. Fire in the hole! particular weapon here is a 37 millimeter gas gun from Defense Technology Corporation of America, used to deploy gas and or specialty impact weapons. What we saw today, I did deploy 6 rounds with a combination of foam batons and wood batons and rubber balls, used to, it's a less lethal round, used to move a crowd back. How much would they hurt? They hurt quite a bit.
What also hurts quite a lot is a huge electrical impulse of thousands of volts applied to the human body, whether it's done from afar or close up. And watch this poor guy. We talk about the electronics, handcuffs and things of that sort. This is a belt, with the idea of putting this belt on maybe a prisoner or an unruly prisoner, or while you're transporting him from one place to another so he doesn't cause problems or try to escape. Watch this, they damn near electrocute this guy that volunteered.
Discharges 50,000 volts of electricity into its victim.
I have no control over it. 8 to 9 seconds. They're holding him. They have hands on. Okay.
We're going to take a break now, and when we return, we're going to show you things that you cannot see. We're going to be looking at, or looking for, stealth aircraft, stealth helicopters, stealth ships, and invisible soldiers. We're going to be right back. You're going to take a short break, relax, and come back, and we'll make your day. Do not adjust your television set, because what you're looking at, but you can't quite make out, is a stealth ship. This ship is 165 feet long. It's not very far away from you in the water, but it's designed exactly the same as a stealth aircraft. It's designed so that you can't see it at night, and if you had radar, you also would not be able to pick up the outline of this stealth ship. It's amazing.
This bizarre stealth ship is practically invisible to radar. Called the Sea Shadow, its design is a radical departure from traditional shipbuilding. The twin hulls form an A-shaped frame, allowing it to float gently above the waves. Top secret project, the Navy had kept a 160-foot ship tucked inside the barge in which it was built. For years, they would test the clandestine boat only in the middle of the night. But recently, the Sea Shadow slid out of hiding for daytime tests off the California coast. Michael Dornheim, engineering editor of Aviation Week, was one of the few civilians watching the stealth ship during its first daytime outing.
I saw this from a Coast Guard cutter. It looked at the radar. You could see people driving around the Sea Shadow in little rubber pontoon boats, and they were real visible on radar. But here's this, 160-foot long boat, and it was essentially invisible.
Naval-long uninterrupted panels help make it invisible to radar.
They're canted back about 40, 45 degrees or so. So if radar comes into the side, instead of bouncing back, it'll just bounce up in the air. This is sort of similar to trying to find someone with a flashlight. Just take a mirror, and instead of pointing the mirror back at the person who's trying to find you, you can angle the mirror up so it deflects the light up and away into the sky.
Now in the main machinery space of the Sea Shadow. On either side of me are the diesel electric generators which provide all the electric power for the ship. From the machinery space we move forward through the galley area and on into the bridge. The bridge is normally manned by a crew of 3. The skipper sits on the left seat. The chief engineer, through a series of computers and data recorders, has full control over all of the functions on the ship. The navigator sits to the right of him, and through utilization of several navigation systems, we're able to accurately plot our position.
But most amazingly, the Sea Shadow doesn't even need a crew. It can be operated by remote control, which may signal the future in small warship design.
So now we have the amazing stealth battleship or warships that can be run even by manual crew or else by remote control. That's the sister to the stealth aircraft, as amazing as it seems to be. And it's interesting that several years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, when patriots and people that were concerned about what was going on in their own backyard, they started to report the black helicopters, black choppers, and it became a big joke. And those people particularly that wanted to shut up the patriot movement and those people who were worried about covert operations in their own backyard, those folks who wanted to throw stones at the patriots mocked them and made fun of them. And they said there are no such thing as black helicopters. What are you talking about? And even when we spoke before the United States Senate and brought up these concerns about helicopters that were practicing and demonstrating their skills and harassing American civilians and citizens around the country, including in the hills of Montana and the small country towns in Tennessee and Kentucky, and we were constantly mocked and told that there were no such thing as black choppers. Well, the black chopper has arrived, and here it is. And this is, of course, the second cousin to the stealth ship, and it is the stealth black helicopters that have been put together.
Design the power margins and the performance margins, the pilot will be able to use every bit of the envelope and fully exploit the agility and the maneuverability that the aircraft will have.
One of the reasons is tail power. The tail rotor of the Comanche does far more than counteract torque and provide directional control. It has added thrust that can maneuver the aircraft rapidly on demand.
If I was flying in my Comanche and all of a sudden I started taking fire from, say, these buildings on my right side, with the power of the fantail on the Comanche, I'm able to do a new maneuver that we call a snap turn.
The snap turn. It means the pilot can spin about on pinpoint, lock onto a target, and fire within seconds. And continue firing even while flying sideways or backwards, staying low, flying half of the Earth. All of this while the Comanche holds altitude automatically over hills and obstacles. The Comanche is a completely cybernetic creation, a new generation of helicopter, redesigned from the rotors down, incorporating technologies that had never been used in a helicopter before. The first thing you notice about the Comanche design is its odd shapes and planes.
The curves are gone. Sharp, flat edges. The tail is not.
Makes everything else possible. 2 lightweight, powerful LH Tech engines that deliver more than 3,000 horsepower, yet weigh only 330 pounds each, are the key to the Comanche's performance. The engine had to be the equal of all the other 21st century components. Digital electronic controls continuously monitor the engines, automatically maintaining their operating parameters while diagnosing and informing the pilot of any problems. Automated controls greatly reduce the pilot's workload. They also mean fewer mechanical parts. In fact, it takes only 6 common tools to maintain the engines. Superpower, super sensors, and the stealth of a shadow. Now, what was needed was a computer to control it all. It has a supercomputer system that can process more than 1 billion bits of information per second and outsmart any other cyber weapon out there. Yet for all its remarkable sophistication and agility, the Comanche nearly flies itself with fly-by-wire technology.
There are no mechanical linkages from the control sticks in the cockpit to the various control surfaces of the airplane. It's all done with wires and digital computers.
The Aeroscout aircraft that I've previously flown required you to spend up to 70% of your workload just in physically flying the aircraft. With this thoughtfully designed digital fly-by-wire system, those numbers could actually be reversed. And whatever you pick up in savings from workload from flight control standpoint, you get to devote to the mission, organizing the battlefield.
Another one of the very best concepts in terms of military and high-tech weapons. If you can imagine, wouldn't it be possibly the most amazing weapon at all if you could take the average foot soldier, or let's say, maybe if you're not talking average foot, if you're talking about a Delta Force or some kind of a SEAL operation, a high-tech secret military operative, if he could actually throw on a switch and make himself invisible to the average eye, to the common eye, make himself invisible on the field or in a neighborhood or whatever the case may be, but make himself invisible to the average person watching or looking for someone by just throwing on a switch. Well, on the onset, you just think about it, you say, wow, now that's really getting far out here. That's really stretching the point. However, they're working on it, and I'm going to venture to say at this point in time, it's probably already a done deal. Now, if you can follow this concept, this is actually pretty easy when you understand what we're talking about here. The military uniform of this soldier would have all over the front of the uniform little small sensing devices and or photographic reproduction devices. And what we're talking about are little microchip controlled micro surfaces that function in two ways. They function both as a camera, both as a photographic camera or a video type camera, if you will, or a sensing device that will pick up light, which then becomes photographic. Both receivers and transmitters. So what you have on the front, for example, would be the screens, the receiving screens all over in small increments. They could be little squares, little circles, whatever they would be. Probably eventually little squares. Now, on the back of the uniform, on the back of the military uniform that we're talking about, again, we're talking about secret weapons here, on the back would be the same thing, both camera transmitters and video transmitters and or microscopic and micro-oriented screens. Now, what takes place here is when the soldier is facing someone and he turns on this unit, the cameras in the back, the very back, the micro cameras on the back of his outfit would take pictures, video pictures of what's directly behind him. The receivers on the front of his uniform would receive that video picture so that if anyone was in front of this soldier within, 50, 25 feet or whatever the case may be, and the soldier was standing with the woods, for example, in the background, the person standing in front would visually see the background or the woods that's directly behind this person because it's being photographed, shot from the back, and transmitted to the front. If the soldier turns, it would automatically be programmed to change and alter as he moves from being receiver or transmitter, from being a video receiver all over his body to being a video transformer or a video camera. So go either from being a camera to a screen, be it front runner back as he would turn. So what they would do is, in other words, directionally aim the visual side of the soldier would be directionally electronically, automatically altered with a little electronic micro brain to change from receiver to transmitter. So now what we have is a guy is standing 10, 20 feet in front of you, and you're looking at him, but you're seeing right through him because you're seeing what commonly would be right behind him. He becomes invisible. That outfit is being worked on, and again, it may already be completed, but it's presently being worked on as we speak. So the individual warrior now would become an invisible warrior.
It seems like it's an idea that's a little far-fetched, but can you really build one? And the answer is yes, you can really build one.
And Mike Burns is already doing it. So how does he intend to blend a soldier into any background?
You want to look like what's behind you, so your back would have to read what's behind you and then transfer the information to the front.
Burns' invisible man will wear a suit of electrically conducting cloth covered with intelligent reflective sensors. By changing their angle and color, these sensors project the image of their background out in front of them.
Now, if you had a perfect image of that, then I would be perfectly blended in with that background, and you would not see me. If it's not a perfect image, you see something that's slightly distorted. It looks like it's something like the background, but there's something else in the way. I don't know if it's a shadow or a tree. If you're off at a distance, you can't tell.
It sounds fantastic, but the technology is already here.
There are enough sensors and devices around that would indicate that you can actually put them together and make the system happen. Something as fantastic sounding as this, actually can be built.
Invisible warriors. Now that would really be something to contend with. Now if we go back to our white papers for the defense plans of 2025 that we retrieved from the Pentagon, done by the Maxwell Air Force Base and their training center, relative to all the variety of equipment that they're putting together. If you could imagine, the next step from invisible warriors would be if you could put a fly on the wall. Remember, that's that old thing everybody's always said, I'd like to be a fly on the wall, and listen to that conversation. If you could put a fly on a wall or micro-robotic spies, that would be the very next step up. And in the white papers, we find that these attack microbots are already described. Now, you have to remember, this paperwork, which was done 96 in that period of time, finished over a period of about a year or so, this is describing, theoretically, equipment that is strictly on the drawing board or in somebody's mind someplace. But what we have found out in 1997 is that probably 90% of these futuristic weapons are already underway. And it even includes the concept of the totally remote control micro-robotic spy systems. There's several of them on not only on the drawing board, but are already been completed. And the concept being here, as it's indicated in this paperwork, is if you could take these micro-robotic spies and or sensors and have them placed in a huge quantity any place you wanted to, they could be sitting on someone's desk and they would never even know that they were there. In 1990, I saw a steam engine that was the size of a head of a pin.
What's called the micro UAV, the extremely small unmanned airplane that has a characteristic dimension on the order of 15 centimeters or 6 inches. Some of these are just little gliders that look like kids' toys. Some of them are powered with motors. Basically, we're trying different concepts right now to see what makes sense from the aerodynamics and structure standpoint. Later on, we'll be integrating actual sensors, small cameras, small listening devices, other things on here that make them a useful tool for reconnaissance in the military.
But when you get down to the microflyer level,
a paradigm shift occurs where it might make more sense now to try and create air vehicles that mimic what we find in creation, things with flapping wings or things like dragonflies with fixed wings that vibrate rapidly. And so microflyers very well may take that form.
To some, it may seem like a scene taken straight out of science fiction. However, others are already thinking in detail about the uses of such tiny flying machines.
Various concepts have been put forward for tiny air vehicles that could act perhaps as a fly on the wall and used in covert operations that would fly into a building. This would be unmanned aerial vehicles that grow smaller and smaller to approach the size of insects, to fix themselves to a ceiling or a wall of an area that they have been drawn to by pheromones given off by human beings, perhaps.
Even more astonishing than a UAV that someday may operate as innocently as a fly on the wall is an unmanned airplane that has already been built. The Pathfinder is able to fly while powered only by the endless renewable energy of the sun.
The Pathfinder, which the center section of it is here behind me right now, is an unmanned solar-powered plane, which is a test bed designed to develop technology that allow a solar plane to fly for months at a time, about 70% covered with solar cells, and has about 800 square feet of wing area. It's only developing about 6.5 kilowatts of power at altitude, so it's 4 good-sized hair dryers have the same power as this airplane.
In fact, the Pathfinder may represent an improvement on natural world efficiency.
The structural weight of this airplane, in fact, is less per unit area than a Dragonfly wing. It's only about 1/8 of a pound per square foot, and a Dragonfly wing is a little more, almost twice that much. And most of the airplane is really not there. Most of the airplane is just air.
And as we look at the Department of Defense paperwork, we realize that that huge, large flying wing that stores solar power, actually solar energy, is exactly what we have, what they refer to in the Department of Defense paperwork as a UAV, the unmanned mothership, and having the ability to store solar energy. And of course, that huge one that we just looked at with the very silent motors, these actually wouldn't be engines, they would be electric motors that would make hardly any noise at all, and would actually be used in the future for a combination of low-level unmanned craft operations, which could actually assist in the transfer of weapons and energy, etc., to other craft. And the idea, they use an interesting term here also, long loitering capabilities. They don't talk about levitating or anything of that sort, but they call it long loitering. And you see, this was originally the general drawing concept, this huge flying wing, as you can see here, this flying wing kind of an idea, and the one that we've just seen in live footage, of course, with the solar panels and additionally the very quiet, what actually would be electric motors. And some of you will remember the Phoenix lights, the huge light triangular configuration that people saw a little while back flying over Phoenix, Arizona at night. It's a real good chance that that strange and unusual craft that they saw and could hardly hear, that was had this sort of a large flying wing kind of a shape to it, may actually have been one of these craft, as we can see right here looking at the pictures. And listen to the description that we have of the witnesses.
When it finally got here and we realized this thing was coming right over us, we really started getting antsy. And then when it went directly overhead without a sound, it was like that. It was so big.
You couldn't even hear the wind. It was so quiet. It was just...
Yeah.
It just didn't even do anything. It just came through.
These images of what they saw are made on a computer. They're a combination of digital photos of the landscape taken by Lee and computer drawings of the objects his family saw in the sky.
It was a giant V, all right? And the right side of the V
went over us. The left side was like a couple blocks over it.
I just didn't know what to do. You know, it was just like, my God, how big is this thing? It didn't seem threatening because when it was right overhead and we couldn't hear a sound, it was like you're just awestruck.
Jim Delatoso has been researching UFOs for 20 years. Right now, he's in the middle of putting together a virtual reality model of what happened that night. He's talked to hundreds of witnesses about the night of March 13th, including the Lees.
I consider Tim Lee and his family to be very reliable and very important in the data that they've given us because they were so close that they could look up and, as they said, almost touch it. As it went over, it went straight like through this V right there, over that guy's house.
It took about 15 minutes to get from when we first saw it all the way till we couldn't saw it.
No one knows for sure what happened that night in the skies over Arizona in March, but thousands of people saw something.
And that something could have also been another top secret unmanned aerial vehicle, a UAV. This one is called Dark Star. This is, of course, the original paperwork, once again, from the Pentagon and the Defense and Department of Defense and the Air Force. This Dark Star reconnaissance craft, which has the ability to fly for extremely long periods of time, it can do what they call as extended loitering. It's an interesting term, but they can loiter in a given area for over 36 hours, which gives it tremendous reconnaissance capabilities. It would have the ability then to contact back electronically and pass the information that it retrieves on an ongoing basis for 36 hours. This craft, which originally was tested in an extremely top secret Area 51, we have, as a matter of fact, we've been able to secure footage of some of the actual tests on an extremely top secret pedestal on which they place these vehicles to test the ability to not show up on radar, its stealth ability. And we also have footage of this one in the air flying.
The Dark Star project is moving forward even after the takeoff disaster during its second test flight. Money has been allocated for a replacement prototype. The Dark Star was designed for operations in openly hostile areas. It has a low radar cross-section, or RCS, a feature common in stealth aircraft.
The aircraft is really designed to be a highly survivable aircraft from the very beginning. That's obviously why it has the unusual shape that it does. It's designed with low observables as its sort of predominant feature. And our objective is to carry a single payload, either a radar or an electro-optical payload, and get very high-resolution imagery over highly defended areas during the very beginnings of a battle, or in some cases before a battle starts.
Many people look at this as a very simple airplane. The airplane, in many respects, is small. It looks relatively uncomplicated, very clean, and yet it's very deceptively complicated. I would equate the complexity of this airplane and the total system involved here to that of the F-22.
Flight 1 in March of this past year was a fully autonomous flight. It's the first time anybody has used differential GPS for both takeoff and landing completely hands-off. That was a tremendous success. There were no commands sent up to the air vehicle. It was 100% autonomous, and that was a major milestone for the program.
As Dark Star rolled down the runway on its second flight, expectations were high. Its first flight had been described as perfect and flawless.
And this is Dark Star 2, which is the updated version of this top-secret spy craft. Now, it's shown here rising up out of the basement of this huge facility located in Area 51. And it's sitting, as you can see here, atop the pedestal. It's rising up out of these huge sliding doors that open up in the ground at Area 51. And several years ago, there had been some still photographs taken of this huge system coming up out of the ground. And the UFO buffs were quite concerned about what was it for, what was it used for. And it is used for, as we can see here, testing the radar stealth ability of any of a variety of the top secret aircraft in Area 51. And this is the first time there's been some live footage of this questionable structure. And actually, what's amazing is that aircraft pilots from airlines have flown over as close as they can, anyhow, to Area 51, and on several occasions have seen at night this huge opening take place in the ground, and it reveals this equipment down inside that's all very luminous and in a red color. And that is actually what we're seeing here with the this stealth reconnaissance aircraft, Dark Star, on top of the test pedestal. And so that may answer some questions relative to what in the world is going on at Area 51. And speaking of Area 51, we go back to the paperwork, the white papers from the Air Force, and they talk about a sanctuary base. What they're talking about here is very, very close to what they've had at Area 51 for a long time, and that is a low observable, all-weather, forward-operating base that would reduce the number of assets that would require to run the base. And of course, what they're referring to here is from a military point of view, but they're also talking about a base that would have highly automated robotic controls where they would run almost all of the base. They would do the testing. They would do the cleanup. They would do all of the technological activities at the base with robots performing most all of the basic operations. And of course, at certain parts of Area 51, for years, they have functioned with certain areas being very robotically set up in a manner such that should they have a mishap, be it a fire from refueling or a changing or a testing any kind of the specialized equipment, not knowing what may take place, they did not want to lose too many more scientists or technicians. And as you can see, this little drawing, as a matter of fact, or a prefab photo here, actually appears very much like some of the areas at 51. And, of course, they have lost scientists previously, and if they could robotically replace them on hazardous areas, that's what they want to do. Now, here's another great one out of the white papers. This is something I had heard about maybe 4 years ago, and it was called dial-a-charge. And the idea here is that you take munitions, whether they're simple munitions or if they are nuclear, and they have a means by which you can simply enhance the explosive power by switching the dial right on the equipment. Now, I had been told several years ago that they did have nuclear dial-a-charge, and that is simply where you can adjust the amount. And I was told by someone in the military we were talking about 1 Hiroshima, 2 Hiroshima, 3 Hiroshima. So we're talking about the ability to actually carry a huge explosive, place it someplace in a suitcase, if you will, and adjust the amount of charge right on the explosive itself, varying the degree of destruction. And we find, lo and behold, it's the first time I found actual paperwork from the government that in fact shows and implies that the dial-a-yield, is what they call it, is a reality. Again, when we talked about this a few years ago, people said, well, it couldn't even be done. Well, you know, it's that same old story. You know, we can't split atoms, we can't fly, and we can't go to the moon. You know, people pull all that old baloney that it can't be done. The bottom line is, it can be done. It's simply a variation on existing science. So let's not become naive. We can simply dial a charge and change one explosive unit into an explosive unit that would be 10 times the normal yield by adjusting it on the explosive itself.